Hey guys! So today we are going to have another sit and chat with me video, and I really love to film these because they're a lot less informal and I can just have a nice chat with all of you. So today I wanted to talk about my master's degree. I've just finished my dissertation presentation like 2 months ago from now, and I feel like I have enough distance from the process to really talk about it and tell you all about my experience. So first of all, a little background. I enrolled in my master's degree back in 2017, and it was a master's degree in European and global law. And I decided to pursue that master because I wanted to have an international background on law instead of a domestic one, and I really wanted to go beyond the traditional line of thinking, and the program and the way that they presented the classes and the evaluation methods were all things that really interested me. In my bachelor's, we had a very traditional approach to evaluation, so most of the times we had a midterm and then we had a final exam, sometimes an oral evaluation, and then we would get our grades. In my master's, which took 1 year of classes and 1 semester to write a thesis, we had mostly classes that were evaluated through a paper and not an exam. So in this case, a paper was something that gave us a lot more freedom in terms of deciding what we wanted to investigate and to write on. And that was something that was very valuable for me because back in my bachelor's, I feel like we didn't have enough freedom to think for ourselves because we were learning the foundations and the basics of law and its principles. So it was very hard to teach us those classes while also allowing us to have freedom in explaining things in our own words and allowing us to delve deeper into the subject and write something on it. That was something that was very different in my master's degree, and it was something that I actually really loved. I really like to write in general, and I've always been kind of a wannabe writer, so being able to delve into scientific writing in the subject of law was something that really interested me because we really had to write tons of papers, tons of research papers in a very short time. So I really enjoyed that added challenge of having to write so many papers in such a short notice, and I feel like that completely developed and improved the way that I write and that I investigate and that I conduct academic or scientific research. And in a way, I think that evaluation method really prepared us for what was to come in terms of writing the thesis. Writing a thesis was quite a challenge, I must say. I thought I was much more prepared than I was. There were many challenges that mainly consisted of basically having to delete entire sections of my work, having to rewrite arguments, having to suddenly understand that all of my footnotes had to be converted to another footnote style and another citation style. So I had a lot of flops on the way, and they were all an integral part of the process, and I think that they teach you a lot about how you see the world and how you convey the things you see onto paper and for an audience. In terms of the method you should use when you start investigating for your master's, most professors will recommend you to start reading, and that's a very important part because the reading process will allow you to understand where you're headed towards, what's your direction, what are your main arguments, and what are the things you really disagree with and the things you really agree with. When you finished all of your reading, which sometimes takes 2 to 3 months or even more, you should start doing some reading summaries. These are basically papers that summarize the arguments and the theories of the authors you have been exploring, and they will be very handy when you start the writing process. By this time, you should also have something similar to a table of contents or something that really makes you understand where the structure of your thesis is going. You should read and do your reading summaries with your table of contents in mind because sometimes you can't summarize everything and there are small little details that can really matter in the long term, and you should convey them to paper in the beginning so you're aware that that information can be translated to the final stage of your writing. After you have all of your notes ready, you should start writing the thesis itself. And writing, in my case, is not really a challenge. My main problem is being able to convey exactly what I think and what I believe into words that can be understood by the people who are reading that document. And that was kind of a challenge because when you're dealing with very academic-like writing, sometimes you cannot use the words you use in your normal speech during the day, and you need to find the exact words that portray whatever you're thinking, but the words that are translated into academic writing. I also think that it's very important to basically find a way to read articles that basically explain you how you should do that task of translating your thoughts into academic writing. And there are a lot of very important and helpful resources out there that are very handy in terms of helping you with that translation process. And I recommend you to read as many articles on academic writing as you can, because you'll basically absorb that information like a sponge, and that will help you throughout the entire process, which is very long, and in my case took more than 6 months. Another important thing in writing your thesis is having a good communication with your supervisor, and also talk about your ideas and your thesis with people that surround you. I think it's very important for you to talk about your thesis in a regular basis to people who know nothing about the topic and who are completely uncomfortable in adding their own ideas. And that exercise is very important because right away people will tell you whether they believe in your ideas, whether they agree with you or not, and whether they think that you're not explaining your points that well. And that's important because you should be able to ignore your pride and understand that that feedback is very important despite those people not knowing about the subject as much as you. You're trying to convey your idea to a bigger audience and not limit the subject to people who are aware of the subject and have explored the subject before, and will always give you very technical understanding and feedback of your arguments, and will not give you very thorough analysis of your thesis as a whole in terms of a method of communication of your idea to the world. Another thing that you will go through in case you want to have a master's and write a dissertation is reviewing your material all the time. I cannot put enough emphasis on this. You are going to rewrite things over and over again. You are going to read the same paragraph over and over again. And although boring, that's part of the process. And it's the fact that you're very thorough in your writing and your reviewing that will make a better outcome out of your investigation and all of your writing process. In terms of your presentation, I think that this was one of the things I was most afraid of. And that's because although I feel comfortable with writing and I'm quite confident with how I write in English, I was not very confident about presenting that dissertation to an audience and the panel of people who were going to evaluate me and give me a grade for that thesis. First of all, because my presentation was in English, and I kid you not, despite having a YouTube channel in English, I do not feel comfortable talking in English in front of people. And that's because YouTube has an incredible thing called editing, and you can edit out a lot of completely dumb mistakes in English, which you cannot do when you're presenting your final thesis. So I was quite nervous about that. And I was also kind of nervous because that presentation basically is a summary of the whole process of months of writing and then months of waiting for the presentation. And everything is basically decided during that hour. So if I can give you any tips for your master's presentation, it's basically prepare your presentation beforehand as many times as you can. And I remember that the week prior to my presentation, I practiced that exact 10-minute presentation that I would be making in the beginning of the discussion like 20 times until like my throat was dry and raspy. And I think that's part of the process, and it really helped me to practice it so many times. I was memorizing all of the bullet points I had to go through, and I was jumping from topic to topic in a very comfortable way. And I think that practice ended up reflecting in the final result of my presentation. After those 10 minutes of presentation, which normally use a PowerPoint or a slide or some images and charts, then the discussion starts. And my idea of a master's presentation was a lot different than what happened, because when we started the discussion, me and the 3 professors who were there, it was like actually a conversation. We were sharing ideas. They shared their feedback in a very welcoming and kind way. They gave me a lot of insights on what they understood well and not that well in terms of my writing. What were the ideas that I conveyed very well? What were the ideas that I did not convey very well? And basically it was a conversation of feedback where they were trying to understand whether I believe in the core of my thesis, whether I could support it with arguments that were not reflected into paper in front of them, and basically whether I could really defend the ideas I was portraying to paper and into my arguments in a way out of the box. Although that discussion was a 1-hour discussion, time really flies by, and once you start discussing something you are comfortable with, because despite being an evaluation, presenting your thesis is much different from having an oral evaluation during a semester. And that's because you're so very comfortable with the topic. Probably those people never delved into the topic as much as you did. So when you just understand that and you start discussing your thesis with other people, you suddenly become aware that this is not a problem. And you're comfortable and you're able to back up your ideas with other arguments and you're able to defend your points. And suddenly the discussion is over and they're ready to give you your grade. Overall, I really liked doing my master's presentation. I really liked doing a thesis. If I could go back in time, I would do my master's all over again. And for anyone who really likes academic research, who likes to investigate, and who likes academic writing, I think that if you have the resources and if you have the time and the availability, a master's is something that is very valuable to your academic path and also to your career, in case that's a factor that you should ponder. And I really recommend you to do it because my experience was quite positive, and I'm actually missing writing some stuff and researching some stuff. And although I do a lot of writing and research back at work, I really miss that structure and that long-term project and process of writing for a very specific paper, and I would definitely do it all over again. And if you're storing very personal information on the internet, like your thesis, then you know how important it is to keep it safe and stored online. And for that, you can rely on Dashlane to help you with that. Dashlane is the only tool you need to stay safe online. It's got you covered. It protects you from people monitoring your history, hacking your data and accounts, or stealing your passwords. Basically, Dashlane compiles 3 or 4 different privacy tools in a cheaper package. As soon as you download it, you won't have to worry about online security issues ever again. Dashlane will tell you how many times you reuse the password, inform you about whether your data is compromised by hackers, and do a scan so you're sure your info is not being used by hackers. Dashlane has a basic free version, but Dashlane Premium has all of the above features and is cheaper than most VPNs or standalone security services. The value you get is not just in the features, but in the peace of mind knowing that Dashlane is actively protecting you from every angle. If you want to try it out, I've got your promo code that gets 10% off Dashlane Premium for anyone who clicks that link. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you next week. Bye guys!